Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming out on this rather warm night in Harpswell. Although I know some people that are suffering through 100+ degree weather, so we ought to consider ourselves lucky. Anyway, I want to call this meeting to order. This is an interesting meeting because it's part business meeting. This is what we would normally do in a regular meeting in the Comprehensive Plan Task Force. But it's also an opportunity to explain to you folks some of the things that we have done in the last several months to modify the comprehensive plan to make it hopefully more acceptable to the community at large, leading to passage in November. I'll go over that in a few minutes. But I want to introduce myself. My name is Al LeGros. I'm the chair of the Comprehensive Plan Task Force. And I'd like to quickly go down the line here. And if we can muscle this all the way down.
Let's get up. I'm Mary Ann Nape.
Phil Taylor.
Dave Brown.
Ryan Hurst. Matt Gilly.
George Prince. All right, thank you very much. We have actually 10 people on our committee, and it's been fairly consistent for, believe it or not, 4 years. We started this project a little less than 4 years ago. And interestingly enough, it's never been brought to a vote before the town because something has always come up, whether it's some concern that we haven't really done the best we could in certain areas, or in the case of last town meeting when we overachieved and the fire marshal had to declare the meeting null and void, and we had to leave. But this comprehensive plan has been basically 4 years in the making. We've had a lot of discussions with the town. We've had a number of public hearings. We have, I think, hopefully captured what this town is all about and what the goals and objectives and hopes and aspirations are for the future. And that's really the purpose of the comprehensive plan. It is not a legal document in the sense that everything that we say in there has to happen by law. But it is a reflection of what the town values and the goals and objectives that the town wants to pursue in the future. So largely what we have in the plan is really recommendations on if you want to achieve certain things in this area, here are some recommendations that we think would be useful. We have to work, and the town has to work through the existing committees and government process that exists in the town. That's the way things are really going to happen. Our task force in and of itself does not have any authority to make anything happen above and beyond that. But let me explain that a little bit more in a few minutes. I want to go to one item of business before we get started with the discussion, and that's approval of the minutes from May 27th. That has been passed out to our members. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the May 27th? A motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. These minutes, by the way, are published and put on the town website. And if you go through and go on the town website, you will see minutes from the last approximately 4 years of meetings and so on that we've had. So thank you very much. The main purpose of our meeting tonight is to really talk about a few things that we have done in the last several months to take things out of the document which we think were somewhat controversial. But before I get to that, I want to just make a couple of points. why do we even want a comprehensive plan here in this town? We haven't had one in 20 years. The town has moved on. Everyone's done okay, and so on and so forth. So what's the value of it? Well, I would cite a couple of things, first of all. Communities that have certified comprehensive plans have access to approximately $80 million of state funding to do a variety of different things. So if it's possible for a town to develop a plan, it certainly makes sense to be able to do that and to have access to those funds. Now, nothing is guaranteed, but that's an important thing to consider. The second thing I would say is that the plan is really an opportunity for the town to, in a unified, coordinated way, come together and establish a vision statement for the future. These are our priorities, these are our values, these are our goals, and these are some things that we think we need to move on and accomplish in the future. And so that's the other important thing to think about on a comprehensive plan. And I wish I had a graphic to show you this, but I want to take a moment to read our vision statement, which has been consistent and on the books since we really started this process. It says, in Harpswell, we cherish our rural roots, our flourishing fishing community, and the remarkable natural resources that surround us. We are committed to being a community that is a welcoming place to raise children and enjoy life as an older adult, where businesses can thrive and everybody has access to a vibrant waterfront. Now that's a 50,000 foot view, aspirational, of the town's vision statement. But in that statement, it contains a lot of the things that this plan addresses. Everything from water quality and potable water, everything from maintaining a rural character as much as we possibly can, everything from maintaining our natural resources, maintaining access to the waterfront for both commercial fishing and recreation, and so on. And it's important for everybody to understand that this plan covers a lot of territory. It doesn't really address one specific thing, but tries to accomplish the goal of addressing a lot of things that are important to the town. Now, over the last several months, we have focused on two specific areas which have created the most controversy in the town as we've sort of unveiled this plan. The first has to do with housing. When we initially started the plan, we received a lot of input from folks that said, we need to figure out a way to have more housing that is accessible to folks that are not wealthy or do not currently own homes or property. Teachers, nurses, tradesmen, fishermen, you name it, you can go on the line, down the line. How can we make Harpswell accessible to more of those people? And so a committee was established, a working group was established to look into that, the Affordable Housing Working Group. And they looked at it for a year and a half. They had meetings with the town. They did due diligence on a lot of different things, and they came up with a series of recommendations. And the Comprehensive Plan Task Force embraced those recommendations. I mean, because they had done a lot of good quality work, so we were going to leverage that work. One thing that was of particular concern to some folks, however, was the notion of changing our ordinances to allow smaller houses on smaller lots. And the reason that was a concern to people was because it sort of goes against well, if you want to protect water and you're concerned about preserving water and so on, how can you put more houses in the town on smaller lots? Doesn't compute. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but there are ways to do that. But we understood there was a conflict there. And so we looked at the housing section of our plan, and there was a goal, a land use section of the plan, and there was a goal in the land use section of the plan. And let me just pull that up really briefly. Goal number 7. Which says, expand the opportunities for attainable housing. By doing that, we're talking about making more land available to build smaller houses on smaller lots. After consultation with the Housing Committee and several other folks, we decided to take that out of the plan because it was somewhat redundant to other parts of the plan, and we felt that by eliminating that goal, we would not destroy or compromise our overall objective of making Harpswell and the housing in Harpswell more attainable for more people. Because we focused on other ways to accomplish that. For example, you can build additional development, ADUs, on properties now easier than you could in the past because we've changed the ordinances to accomplish that. That means that if you're an owner of a house and you think that you want to move to a smaller house, you can do it on your property and you can rent the house that you used to live in, additional dwelling unit, ADUs. In the past, it used to be kind of restricted to family-only type situations. Now the changes to the ordinance are going to open that up and make that more accessible. That's one way. The second way is to take a large house that might exist, a large farmhouse that's been here for decades, maybe even centuries, and to split that up into a couple of different, 2 or 3 more units, so that you have, instead of one family living there, maybe 2 or maybe 3. The footprint of the property doesn't change, and therefore, when you look at it, it looks the same. But it's just that you're using that space differently. The third way is to make long-term housing more available in the town. And that's a complicated issue in some respects because it gets to the other thing that we looked at and wrestle with, and that has to do with short-term rentals. Because the initial feeling was that if we could reduce the amount of short-term rentals in the town, we could make those available on a long-term basis and therefore accommodate people of different income levels and so on. But when we looked at that and we got feedback from people, what we recognized was that we were trying to solve a problem, in a sense, impacting or creating a problem for other people in the town. People in the town who depend on short-term rentals during the summers and so on, and the tourist industry and so on. So we decided to take that out of the plan. Here again, the intent is not to eliminate our concern for affordable or attainable housing, but to try to make it, our approach is a bit more conservative, a bit more measured, and not really try to deal with 5,000 square foot lots or short-term rentals, which could impact other things that we thought were valuable to the town. So those 2 areas were things that we focused on changing and eliminating. The net result is a plan that I think more people in the community can support. It doesn't compromise our basic core values, our goals and objectives, our vision statement, but it just approaches things a little bit more conservatively. Now, that's the good news. And I don't want to open up Pandora's box, but I want to just mention that things are happening at the state level which could potentially impact what we do here in Harpswell. There's a bill, LD 1829, which is an act to build housing for Maine families and attract workers. And that's an interesting bill because essentially what they're proposing is to establish a law or a policy that would allow more small houses on small lots throughout the state. And so we're sitting here in Harpswell and we're trying to thread the needle between that kind of situation and where we are today as a community. And I don't know if Matt Gilly might be a little bit more versed on this than me, but do you want to add anything on that?
It's passed.
It passed.
Law.
Okay, so it's a
And
law.
Also, the only other thing you should add is it requires sprinkler systems in the ADUs.
Okay, so it's possible that you may see by law a developer being able to put smaller houses on smaller lots here in Harpswell. But there's a way to do that, I believe, while maintaining a lot of our core values about rural character and space and scenic views and so on. It has to be done in the right way. It has to be done not just have a developer come in and divide up a piece of property into small lots and put as many houses as they can fit in there. There has to be an understanding and an approach that the town should develop with developers in the future to make sure this is not done willy-nilly. And we can talk about that at another time in another place, but I believe it can be done here. It can be done in a fashion that will be consistent with what we value here in the town. But it's something that everybody needs to be aware of. Things are changing. The state is assuming responsibility and control over a lot of things that used to be handled locally, and that seems to be a trend. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to anybody that would like to comment from the task force. Any have comments or anything? You never shy away from a comment. Come on. This is Mary Ann Nath, who I think most of you know.
Yes, I wanted to know more about LD 1829. My sense is, and I'm hoping, that the final bill will take into consideration whether lots are in a town that are on septic and public water supply. Just as the previous bill that came out 2 or 3 years ago, once it had people talking about it and bringing up the issues, had that caveat that you had a different set of rules because you have to be able to have the appropriate water and septic. I hate to hear something like this be very, very scary without knowing if that's in that or not. And I have to say right now, I don't know, and whether that would come up later. Thank you.
I guess the message to all of us is to stay tuned, stay alert, and let's try to understand how we can adapt and adjust to whatever law is passed. And I think Mary Ann brings up a good point. Harpswell's unique in a number of ways. Geographically, there's no other town in the state that even comes close to what we have here. It is crazy complicated. And so we need to keep that in mind. The other thing is, we're not on septic, municipal septic or water, and so that is a limiting factor for any of our future planning and development in the town. Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah.
Why don't you come up here and,
On that note there, with the septic and stuff, an idea could be to develop a holding tank. So they can get pumped out, so you don't have to worry about, because it's basically all about the septic around here. We all know that. And so the limitations are that for how many people per area. But if you had a holding tank that gets, routinely dealt with, where the folks do that, they're gonna be smiling about that, and then, that solves the problem. It's a holding tank just like you'd have on a bus, a tour bus, or anything else. And it's almost a temporary thing, and it could go away someday. Just an idea.
okay, thank you. Sir.
Tony Barrett, Great Island. You didn't mention, there's two things, I guess, in your housing description. Since the last plan, we had Brunswick Housing's Hamilton Place built. And on that site, there was at least a strive to have some clustered development, to try and have houses a little closer together and with some open space around it. And what has been the assess or the feeling?
I'm sorry, which plot of land, what were you
This
talking?
is Hamilton Place.
Hamilton Place, oh yeah.
Brunswick Housing's
Yeah.
on the neck. What has been the kind of consensus of how that has turned out? That's my first kind of question.
Well, I may defer to Selectman Shipman on this because he was part of the original planning for that, but I would say it's worked out great. It just hasn't, there's nothing that's been done to replicate that since it was initially established. So it was like almost like a one and done deal. But I think my understanding is that the people that live there and the way it's worked out has been fine. And it's set back so that you don't have the concern about a visual impact, and there's a lot of things going for it in that regard. I don't know if you want to add anything, Dave.
Or you want me to? I mean, well, let me just ask the second.
But I would also say that the Hamilton Place lots are 20,000 square foot lots, which is half of what the normal lot size would be. What we're talking about happening here in the state is 5,000 square foot lots.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's a little bit different in terms of,
Well, that's a good reference. Well, maybe it was a baby step we took as a town to try and
Yeah.
do some clustered development.
but nobody has really taken that and developed another area, to my knowledge, in the town.
And then the second question that you mentioned was in the Mitchell Field plan, we had housing, and I remember when the housing committee was going around getting comments, people were raising objections to that because it was taking away views from enjoying the recreational aspects of the field. But the plan had all the development up by the road.
Yep.
In fact, we talked about utilizing the two old Navy houses there, which didn't work out because they weren't old. But what happened to the idea of having some, I'll call clustered apartment townhouses up near the road, wouldn't impact the development within the ring?
Well, the initial Mitchell Field concept did include an area for cluster homes right near 123, up in the upper area. Over the years, support for that has waned a little bit, and When I read the plan now, that area is described as a conceptual design, if you will. If we were to do something like that, it could be done here, but there's a lot less, and this is my personal interpretation, a lot less support for doing it in that particular location at this point in time, as opposed to when it was initially established.
So, Dave Chipman, 22 or so years ago, a bunch of us created the Housing Trust. And we built using, as Tony says, we worked with the Brunswick Housing Authority, and we got some federal money, and we, as a nonprofit, we raised money to help the lower income folks pay a deposit, come with a down payment. The problem is, and the town had created cluster housing, so you take a small lot and you, instead of having the full 2-acre lots, you put a bunch of that in conservation somewhere, and then you can cluster the houses together. It gives you an opportunity to make them less expensive. The problem is that Howard Nannon and I, remember Howard Nannon and I were the last 2 board members on the trust, and we looked at each other and said, let's just put this to bed. And so without the housing trust ongoing, those properties can now be sold at market value. So I think the housing committee now is looking at forming a housing trust and keeping it going, so we'd be able to do something like that.
Yeah, I would want to echo something that Dave said. We do have a housing committee right now in the town, and it was born out of the Affordable Housing Working Group and the report that they submitted to the select board last summer, several months ago. And the chairman is sitting right over here on my left, Sean Rule. And so these folks are working hard to try to figure out appropriate solutions for the town so that folks can come in here and maybe afford housing that they otherwise would not be able to do. So we need to rely on that committee to do their work and to feed that into the town decision process. Queue up, you can do it.
I'm Charlie Hancock, I live in Dingley Out. In having worked in other communities, there are, in case of the 1829 legislation, issues of water, issues of sewer, there are various zoning classifications for residential a lot of communities have, whether it's the 80,000 foot lot or the 5,000 foot lot, locating them in appropriate locations. So therefore, you can try to maintain the rural look. We're not rural, we're suburban, that's the reality of it. Maybe you don't want to see Quahog Farm, which I don't want to see, because the houses are even space, they're huge. No developer is going to take an 80,000 foot lot and put a starter house on it.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. You're going to get a McMansion sold for several $1 million, considering the cost of things around here. So you need different residential zoning classifications that should be recommended, looking at the map of Harpswell, picking the appropriate locations for them. In maintaining market value, I've wondered about that housing trust properties. What happened? They reverted back to market. One, of course, way, common in a lot of places, are co-ops, where you have a co-op board that acts perhaps like the housing trust, depending what you want to call it. Properties are ultimately purchased at a discounted rate, but they're also sold at that discounted rate. This is common in New York. I know it exists in Philadelphia, where I'm originally from. And I think it exists in various places, even here in Maine. Is it Brightside over in Fitchburg? It's a co-op, I think. It limits sales prices, but also purchase price. The idea being that if someone is a member of this co-op, they're a full-time Harpswell residents. So the property is not sold to wealthy people from away. So the property does not revert to market rates. Isn't the average property in Harpswell worth $700,000 now? If you're starting a family, you can't live here. even if you're from here, unless you've inherited your property. So it needs to be an ownership model that lets people in and maintains the affordability. And obviously what the numbers are, I don't know off the top of my head. Perhaps obviously in areas zoned for smaller lots, are they 5,000 foot lots, are they 10,000? Obviously we can make, obviously if water's not available, it's not gonna happen. So there are studies. I know the state's done some studies. I went to one meeting, they said, we don't know how much water's here. How do we know? We don't have all the wells registered. We don't know what the reserve is down there. We don't know the nature of the geology underneath holding the water. So obviously there's a lot of studies here that have to be done. But I do think there are options that taking things out of the comprehensive plan has seriously made the document less valuable. As a guideline projecting toward the future, trying to open up other ideas, making it possible for a working person to be here. For a bank manager, teacher, lobsterman, whatever. They just can't be here unless they've inherited their property, which is some people have, but that's actually not an ongoing good policy.
Well, a couple of comments. First of all, we may debate whether taking out those specific things of the plan weakens the plan or does something like that. What we felt was that there was enough that was left in the plan to demonstrate that the town was concerned about affordable or attainable housing, and that we wanted to take appropriate steps to resolve the problem. The purpose of our plan is broad-based suggestions, 100,000 square foot, 100,000 foot view. It's up to committees like the the Housing Committee, the Planning Board, and the Select Board working in an appropriate way to kind of work out the details of things that you're talking about. And that brings me to another point. One of the most important recommendations that we're making in conjunction with this plan is that an implementation committee, a comprehensive plan implementation committee, be established as soon as practicable to work with the existing committees in the town and the select board and the leadership in the town to make sure or track progress in the areas that have been identified in the plan as important. And it's not only about housing. I want to reiterate that. There's a lot more in this plan than just about housing. Housing has been a thorny issue, but there's a lot more in the plan than just housing and so on. And so we need to look at it and consider it from that perspective. But I certainly appreciate your comments, and I would say that the details and how Harpswell actually ends up working this problem out is going to come through committees like the Housing Committee, the Planning Board, Select Board, and then ultimately the town, because any ordinance changes that are required are going to have to come to a vote before the town. So there's a big process that's involved here, and hopefully we'll come up with the right answers.
It's just that change is inevitable.
Yep.
And we can put it down across the flowing river and we'll stop the flow for a while.
Yep.
But that river will break through. And it seems right now the comprehensive plan is a little more restrictive than I'd like to see. I mean, I'm willing to be the no man as opposed to the yes man here. But, I mean, I like what's here right now. That's, after all, why I'm here. But I'm first to say, so perhaps there's a little inconsistency there on my part. But we have to build a structure of change. In a way, I mean, if you say you're a working waterfront town, you need to be able to have people who work here afford to be here. And right now, we are a wealthy retirement community in general, to a large extent, from people, a lot of people from away. And this is, we're not Vail. I don't want to live in Vail or Nantucket. We're approaching it. I worry about that.
And I think all of us do, so thank you very much. You're next.
Based on how this committee has operated and that I basically knew nothing, was worried about water availability, but basically knew nothing else about all these various things. I hope that folks with, your ideas and information and maybe background would participate in the housing committee. Pardon?
I've offered.
Okay, hope that works out. Because that's what, somebody who has background, ideas, not afraid to talk, is probably needed. So, thanks.
Floor is yours.
Okay, John Anthony, Bailey Island. News of 1829 was a little bit new to me. Probably shouldn't have been, but there's hundreds of bills going through the legislature, so it's hard to keep up with all of them. One simple question, and I could look it up if I, but you may know the answer. What's the enforcement mechanism in this new law?
I don't know the answer to that. Maybe Matt, do you know?
I'm sure.
My understanding is they're going to create some kind of committee or structure at the state level.
This is a typical, this is a typical one-size-fits-all
Yeah.
government.
But if I'm just guessing, but if I suppose if there's concern about how things are going in a particular town or municipality, that they might come in and say, hey, you're not compliant and we need to do something.
And then what? Okay,
I don't know.
I'm not compliant.
Yeah, we just don't know because it's new and, but I know people are concerned about the fact that it chips away at some local control that you would have, and that's something that all of us needs to deal with.
Not just local, personal control, right? I mean, we are talking about private property here. And you mentioned Harpswell is unique. We all know that's true, but there are a lot of other towns in Maine that are unique. And does a law such like this pretty much obviate any town's comprehensive plan? I mean, if it does, why doesn't the state write plan for us?
No, I think towns are going to be compelled to do comprehensive plans just to get access to, above one thing, access to funding. And I think there's value above and beyond that, as I said before, in kind of bringing the community together and identifying things that they can believe in as important things for the town to do.
You said compelled? It's still voluntary.
The comprehensive plans are not required by the state of Maine right now.
Right.
So the town has to be motivated by the things that I mentioned before, either access to funding or a belief that putting something together that can guide us into the future has benefit. Not only for decision making, but also for building community and so on and so forth.
Is that funding in general or something specific that you have in mind?
There's a category, there are a number of categories of things that can be funded with this money. I don't have that at the top of my head, but it includes planning for development and there may be several other things too, but I'll have to do some more research on that.
It was just it's a question of curiosity because we are dealing with, is that something we desperately need, or is it something we can afford to do without that money?
Well, I mean, I think every community would certainly welcome the ability to tap into funds that
Sure.
are made available. Who knows what we're gonna need in the future, but if we can just qualify to do something like that, to me, that's a benefit.
Right, so that's the cost of qualifying. That's all, I just wanted to know what the enforcement mechanism was on this new law, and it's, other towns are gonna be asking that same question.
Let me just clarify something. What- I misspoke earlier when I said that the 1829 requires sprinklers. It removes the requirement for sprinklers.
Problem where you don't have water.
All right. It's not a bad thing.
Okay, let me go here first. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Allison Smith. I live on 742 Cundy's Harbor. I just want to thank you all. I mean, for 4 years, that sounds like a lot of work. So thank you to everybody and our public servants for all of your hard work. We appreciate all you do. I want to speak about the need for affordable housing. I guess I understand what I think I hear you're saying, which is you had to remove housing out of the land use section in order to get it to pass?
No, we removed a portion, one specific goal out, because in one case, the feeling was that it was redundant with some other things that were in the plan. And in another case, we felt in the case of housing that it impinged on short-term rentals, which,
No, I mean, I understand why you took that part out.
Yeah.
But when I'm just trying to catch up with all of you. And when I looked at the land use section, it listed different uses, and one of the uses of our using our land was housing. And I find it odd that that had to be taken out. So, but if it needs to happen in order to pass, and as long as we have this commitment to affordable, attainable housing,
well, there's a commitment, and I would just cite the fact that we have an affordable, we have a housing committee now permanently in the town.
Yeah.
That's a commitment.
yeah.
And what we've tried to do is tailor this a little bit, not to say that it's not important, but to eliminate some redundancy that we saw in the report, and perhaps gave people the impression that we were pounding this message a little bit too much in the report. As I said before, this is not about just housing. It's not just about land use. There's a whole host of things in there.
Yep, yeah.
So we wanted to make sure that it was a little bit more balanced, and we felt that that was the best thing to do.
Yeah, okay, so I hear what you say. I guess I want to remind us all that most people start off renting. And to me, to not be considering that as an access point for young families to come into our community, or older people like my mom, who was like barely making it, she had to rent. And so I guess I just invite the housing committee to remember that we need all kinds of housing. We don't need McMansions. We need all kinds of housing, yes, it needs to do the rural character. And yes, of course, it needs to care for our water and our stewardship of water resources. But honestly, we have to put housing closer together in order to make it more possible for people to live here. And so I just want to share that is how people come into communities, is often by renting. And it's often by you're just starting out. And we want those seniors to come. We want those young people to come. We want those middle folks to come. So I love the vision. The vision said we are going to be welcoming. And so this is what I believe is this housing, our housing options in this community need to reflect that welcoming spirit. And as a community, I really think we have got to invest there. We've got to make it happen. And so I would vote for the comprehensive plan with, you know, that spirit.
Thank you very much. Please do, in November. Any other comments from the floor? Yes, sir.
Alan and Mary Ann, perhaps, and others, could you bring us up to date on some of the geologic-based studies on the limits of water, fresh potable water in the town of Harpswell? What is known, what is not known? Because it strikes me that's an absolute limit on everything you've been talking about.
All
I'm
right.
gonna go over there and talk.
All right. I'm going to let Mary Ann do this. I think the last time we had a water study was something around 2011 or something. Does that sound right, Mary Ann? 2008. So it's been a while. But we've had some, I would say, anecdotal inputs from the state hydrologist who basically says, we really don't know how much water is there, but we feel you have enough water under normal circumstances to handle what you have right now. Now, you know, it's pretty vague, but I'm going to let Mary Ann talk about that.
That's the problem. We've had 2 water studies done that have been done by geologists. And what we know is we live on fractured rock reservoir. We are not on an aquifer. So basically the water that we have in town is distributed between the fractures in the rock, which are not very consistent. We have a pipe going into the ground with veins coming in from the side. So if one of those veins closes, it affects the amount of water that you get into the pipe. This is all what the geologist told us. She also told us that based on the water supply that we get in Harpswell, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but they're trillions of gallons. And if we figure how many gallons of water an average person uses per day, we still have well over 2 or 3 times more than we need. The problem is we don't know where it is. And that's the issue. You can't say, well, there's water there, so I'll build my house here. It can change on your own property. So what the state is trying to do, though, is, and I was going to mention this at the end, they are looking to kind of get a balance of the water table throughout towns. And if you happen to have an extra well on your property that is not being used and hasn't been pumped in a number of years, that you are willing to allow the state to put a monitor on, they would like to start to get a gauge of what the actual amount of water is. And I have information on how to sign up for that project if you're interested. And then just to do a little side step from that, the Conservation Commission got involved with the state as this became an issue over the time we've been doing the plan. We have realized that tied into just how much water we have, a lot of it comes down, the less area you have for it to soak in and the less amount of vegetation you have on a property, a lot of it's going to run off. So we have been starting some training. We've had a couple of programs that are going to be talking about how you can help your own property keep that water that comes down as rain. And this also gets into, if you're near the water's edge, erosion of the water as it's running down because there is not enough vegetation. We invite you to come to our next presentation, which is going to be in early fall, and it's going to talk about erosion. And we have a landscape designer who is looking into that and coming up with some really low cost ways to just use nature to help you keep the water on your property. Unfortunately, there is no scale that we will ever know that we can say, over here, you're going to have water. So the two studies that have been done have given us a lot of information. I hate to say that we need another study because we may need to find out more information to build on the studies we have. So.
Okay, good, thank you. Just a quick comment on that. I live on Orr's Island, Johnson Point Road. We have 9 houses, I think, on the little peninsula that we live on. I've never had a problem with water. 100 yards down the road, my neighbor can't generate enough water from wells that he's put in there. He has 3 huge tanks that get filled up. We're 100 yards, 150 yards apart. And that's the frustration. And it's hard to gauge exactly, if I build a house here, is that going to impact my neighbor over here, or is not going to have any impact? Or and that's the trick of this whole thing. It's very frustrating, but that's the reality.
My partner and I built our house in 1990. We don't have a well. We collect rainwater. We have 2 different tanks under the house. I have a whole house filter. I use a Brita for my drinking water. And in the Caribbean, that's how you get your water, because
Yeah.
most people have a cistern. Don't know if that's something that can be discussed.
That's a good point, and I've heard that before, and I know a number of people have tried to implement that. There's probably a lot more that we could do individually, each one of us, to conserve water and so on. But when you look into the future and try to predict how many residences can this town support, that's a real hard math problem. I don't know how to solve that. Because we're dealing with some unknowns here that are very difficult to deal with. Variables, yeah. Yeah. Now, one other thing I would mention, there was somebody that came up and talked about how you talked about housing and so on. There is a study or a document. It's called Rural by Design, and it was written by a landscape architect and who's fairly famous throughout the country. I think his name is David Arendt, A-R-E-N-D-T. What is it? Randall Arendt. Okay, thank you. Randall Arendt. I read through that document and I was impressed by the fact that in his view, you can have small houses on small lots combined with other types of properties and preserve the rural look, feel, character of a neighborhood. And that struck me because a lot of people think that if you build these smaller houses on small lots, you're destroying some bedrock things that we believe in here. But I think there's a way to perhaps accommodate both sides of the equation. Randall Arendt, I would encourage you to look at that and see how he approaches development, landscape development, and so on. So,
hello, my name is Gabrielle Page. I live here in the harbor. This quote from Randall Arendt here resonated with me a lot. As we were having our discussion, I was thinking about how we can think of preserving rural character by not having too many houses close together, or we can think of it as preserving open, undeveloped space. And so I would be quite excited to see small houses, which are less carbon intensive or less resource intensive to build and maintain, having these houses close together, and then having open space and trails and areas for wildlife. And I think that would that'd be a wonderful thing and achieve several goals, including preserving our natural resources and helping some of that rainwater get into the ground for our wells. Thank you.
that's why our housing committee has a lot of work to do.
I recognize that name because me and Dave, we've been through this whole thing back in 2013 with the CPIC. we did a whole study and built a whole simulation on how to do a conservation subdivision ordinance. And that Randall, I think we even had him consult our town.
I think he lives in Brunswick.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, he moved up here. Well, I think that, I have those, all those things, and I'll dig them up and share them for, because it seems like everyone forgot about what we did, Dave. Let's go.
All right. Anyone else have any comments from the task force at this point? I want to close by just saying a couple things. First of all, we wanted to reach out to various parts of the town in the last phase of this to try to get some more participation than we would normally get if we were meeting in the town hall. And that we've succeeded here. I appreciate that very much. We're going to have a meeting on Orr's Island at the schoolhouse on the 8th of July. 22nd of July, we're going to be in Kellogg Church, same thing. And then on the 16th of August, there'll be a public hearing, the last public hearing on this plan. That's the time that you need to focus on the plan in its totality. This is going to come to a vote in November. It's going to be a secret ballot. And all I can say is that I think we put something together that makes sense for the town. Not everybody's going to agree with every part of it, but in totality, I think it hits the important things that we're really concerned about, and I hope everybody can support it in the end. Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to remind people how to get to the comprehensive plan if they want to read it?
Good point. Okay, for those that have access, computer access, it's on the town website. You click on Harpswell, and we have a special section on the town website, comprehensive plan. You go into that, and all of the plans, the plan is there in totality. It's also, there's a line in, line out. As we've modified this plan, we've put things in and modified things, and you can see how we've changed it, changed some wording to make it read a little bit better and to more appropriately reflect what we really want to do at this point in time. So go to the website, it's there.
The front page.
Yeah.
Is there a summary somewhere? I mean, most people are not going to.
There are comprehensive plans in the libraries. One is at Orr's and Bailey Island Library. The other one's at the Cundy Harbor Library. Now this version, which I have here, if you go to the library and read this, you may not see everything that we've changed, but most of it has remained intact, so you can get a good idea for the scope of it and the things that we've talked about.
It also has an executive summary.
That's what I'm asking.
Oh,
50 pages.
yeah, executive summary, yeah, okay. Well, you can have a couple of martinis and try to...
Or fall asleep. Make a picture.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Al, I just wanted to respond to one of the comments about the land use section. Sean Rell, I'm on the housing committee. We suggested that the housing section in the land use document, or the land use section, be removed because we felt it was adequately addressed within the section specifically for housing. It was to clean up the document. We feel like there is adequate there's adequate support for housing still within the comp plan.
It wasn't meant to take away from the importance of it. It was just a matter of, we think this is redundant. It appears in other parts of the document, so we took that out. Thank you very much. Anything else? Well, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. It's been great, and November 4th, thumbs up.
Thank you.
All right.